What could make the royal Princess Charlotte of Wales sell cookies to chemo patients? As shocking and intriguing as it sounds, you'd never believe the reason why. Amy Jane had a very lovely relationship with her brother, Matthew. He was her world, the one who shielded her from bullies, made her laugh until her sides ached, and read her bedtime stories when her parents were too busy. But now, her hero was fading before her eyes. Matthew's once lively demeanor had been replaced by exhaustion, his bright smile dulled by the relentless grip of cancer. Amy Jane had never felt so sad. At night, she lay awake listening to the muffled conversations of her parents, their hushed tones dripping with worry. One evening, she heard words that made her sadder and scared for her brother's life. The bills are becoming too much. His medications are becoming more expensive, her mom had said. The idea of losing him sparked a desperate determination in her young heart. You can't guess what this 8-year-old did. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory. A little kindness, paired with hard work, can create miracles. It was a saying they had often shared over the clinking of cookie trays in the kitchen. Inspired by those warm, fun-filled afternoons, Amy Jane had an idea, a big one for a girl her age. She crept into the pantry that night, pulling out flour, sugar, and chocolate chips. With her grandmother's old recipe book propped open, she measured and mixed, her tiny hands leaving floury imprints everywhere. Her mother, who had come into the kitchen for a glass of water, was surprised to see Amy Jane in the kitchen mixing flour. When she asked her why she was baking cookies at night, Amy Jane said that she wanted to help raise money for her brother's chemo. Too exhausted to argue with her, her mother lets her do her thing. The cookies weren't perfect. Some were lopsided, others too crisp, but they carried a message of love. By morning, Amy Jane was ready. She dragged an old card table to the end of their driveway and carefully arranged the cookies on mismatched plates. A piece of cardboard served as her sign, the words "Cookies for Matthew" scrawled in bright, uneven letters. As she stood there, the morning sun glinting off her golden hair, Amy Jane felt both nervous and hopeful. Her stand was small and humble, but to her, it represented a powerful hope. She could help her brother. With every cookie sold, she could fight for her brother. Cars slowed as they passed, drivers curious about the determined little girl. Some neighbors stopped to buy cookies, touched by her story. Though her sales were modest, Amy Jane felt a flicker of pride with each coin dropped into her jar. What Amy Jane didn't know was that her small act of love would soon set off a chain of events that would change not only her family's life, but inspire kindness across the world. And it all began with cookies, a dream, and a sister's unwavering love. One hot morning, Princess Charlotte of Wales was being driven to a school event. At just 9 years old, Charlotte was already a curious and spirited soul, eager to explore life beyond the confines of palace walls. The journey wound through a quiet residential street, and as her gaze wandered, something unusual caught her eye. At the edge of a driveway was a small cookie stand. It wasn't the stand itself that caught her attention, but the determined little girl standing behind it. The girl's golden hair glinted in the sunlight, and her sign, "Cookies for Matthew," stood out in big, uneven letters. Charlotte felt a tug at her heart. With a sudden burst of excitement, she asked her driver to pull over. Stepping out of the car, Charlotte approached the stand, her polished shoes crunching on the gravel. Behind the table stood Amy Jane Rivers, her cheeks slightly pink from the chilly air, and a smudge of flour on her nose. When Amy Jane saw the well-dressed girl approaching, she greeted her with a shy smile and asked if she'd like a cookie. This is one of the most shocking parts. Charlotte's eyes scanned the tray of cookies. Some were a little lopsided, others slightly overbaked, but she eagerly reached for one. The first bite was delightful. The cookies were warm, sweet, and filled with something special that Charlotte couldn't quite name. She praised their taste, and her curiosity got the better of her. She asked Amy Jane how she had learned to bake. Amy Jane's face lit up as she explained how her grandmother had taught her, recounting the lessons filled with laughter and love. But her expression turned somber as she shared the deeper reason behind her stand. Her older brother, Matthew, was battling cancer. Her family was struggling with medical bills, and she wanted to do whatever she could to help. Charlotte listened, her young heart heavy with empathy. Despite her royal upbringing, she understood the weight of Amy Jane's words, because her own mother was also undergoing chemo as she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Without revealing who she was, Charlotte asked if she could learn how to bake cookies and help sell them too. Amy Jane, thrilled at the idea of a friend joining her mission, agreed instantly. not realizing that her new baking partner was no ordinary girl. As Charlotte returned to her car, she couldn't stop thinking about Amy Jane's courage. Little did they know, this unplanned meeting would ignite a movement far beyond their small street. The next morning, Amy Jane couldn't contain her excitement as she announced to her parents that a new friend was coming over to help bake cookies. Her parents, though touched by her enthusiasm, assumed it was one of the neighborhood kids. Smiling, they told her to set up the kitchen, never imagining who was about to walk through their door. When the doorbell rang, Amy Jane rushed to answer it, her small apron already dusted with flour. But the sight that greeted her parents left them momentarily speechless. Standing on their modest front step, flanked by a discreet security team, was none other than Princess Charlotte of Wales. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Amy Jane's mother blinked, unsure if she was dreaming, before hastily inviting the young princess inside. Princess Charlotte smiled warmly, her demeanor as unassuming as any 9-year-old visiting a friend. Amy Jane, oblivious to the significance of her guest, pulled her into the kitchen, chattering excitedly about the recipe they would use. It wasn't until her mother leaned down and whispered in her ear that the truth hit her. "Amy Jane," she murmured, "your new friend is a princess. Princess Charlotte of Wales." The words hung in the air like a spark waiting to ignite. Amy Jane froze, her spoon halfway to the mixing bowl, and turned to look at Charlotte, her eyes wide with wonder. Could it really be true? The same girl who had eagerly bought cookies yesterday, who stood beside her promising to help her brother, was royalty? Charlotte, noticing Amy Jane's stunned expression, gave a small laugh. "I just want to bake cookies," she said softly, brushing it off as though her royal title was no more special than a middle name. At that moment, Amy Jane made a decision. To her, Charlotte wasn't the Princess of Wales. She was simply a kind-hearted friend who had shown up to help when it mattered most. "Okay," Amy Jane finally said, her voice steady. "Let's get started." As the two girls worked side by side, their laughter filled the kitchen. They measured flour, cracked eggs, and shaped dough with an ease that dissolved any barriers between their worlds. Charlotte insisted on getting her hands messy, rolling dough and decorating cookies with as much enthusiasm as Amy Jane. As the cookies baked, Charlotte brought out brightly colored cards she had brought with her. On each one, she wrote a message. "Help Amy Jane's brother fight cancer. Thank you for your support." The two girls attached the cards to the cookie bags, preparing for another day at the stand. By the following afternoon, whispers of Princess Charlotte selling cookies at a modest stand had spread like wildfire. What had started as an ordinary street corner was now transformed into a hub of activity. Cars lined the street, and neighbors peered from their windows, eager to witness the princess in action. When Amy Jane and Charlotte arrived, arms full of freshly baked cookies, they froze at the sight of the gathering crowd. Amy Jane's little table looked dwarfed by the sea of people waiting patiently, some clutching cameras, others holding money and encouraging signs. Amy Jane felt her stomach twist in nervous knots. She had never been the center of so much attention. Turning to Charlotte, she whispered, "There are so many people." Charlotte, ever composed despite her young age, placed a reassuring hand on Amy Jane's shoulder. "We'll do this together," she said, her quiet confidence contagious. As they set up the stand, the crowd began to cheer. Charlotte greeted them with a warm smile, while Amy Jane busied herself arranging the cookie trays. It wasn't long before the first customer stepped forward, an elderly woman who placed a 20-pound note on the table. "I don't need any change," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Your story reminds me of my own brother who fought cancer years ago. Keep up the good work, girls." Amy Jane blinked back tears, managing a heartfelt, "Thank you." With Charlotte by her side, she found her voice growing steadier with each passing customer. Soon, the story behind the cookies began to ripple through the crowd. People marveled at Amy Jane's determination to help her brother, and Charlotte's decision to lend her royal hands to the cause. It wasn't long before the media arrived. Journalists and photographers swarmed the stand, their cameras capturing every moment of the princess and her new friend working side by side. For hours, the girls worked tirelessly. Charlotte handed out bags of cookies with her signature grace, while Amy Jane explained their mission to anyone who asked. Donations poured in, each more generous than the last. Strangers shared stories of loved ones battling cancer, their voices uniting in support of Amy Jane's mission. By sunset, the cookie trays were empty, but the jar on their table overflowed with cash. Amy Jane and Charlotte sat back, exhausted, but exhilarated. The little stand that had once felt like a quiet act of love had transformed into something much larger. The total donation surpassed anything Amy Jane had imagined. The funds would cover her brother's treatment, and then some, paving the way for others to receive help as well. As the last of the crowd dispersed, Charlotte turned to Amy Jane with a gleam in her eye. "This isn't the end," she said. Although Amy Jane didn't understand what she meant by that, for the first time in weeks, felt hope bloom in her heart. The story of Princess Charlotte's selfless act spread like wildfire. News outlets from every corner of the globe picked it up, splashing images of the young royal and Amy Jane side by side, their flour-dusted hands holding trays of cookies. But it wasn't just a story about a princess. It was about the bond between two girls, bound not by privilege or circumstance, but by a shared determination to make a difference. In the days following the now legendary cookie sale, letters and donations poured into Amy Jane's small town. That's not even all. Strangers wrote heartfelt notes, many recounting their own experiences with loved ones battling cancer. Some sent checks with instructions to help others like Matthew. Others sent small donations, accompanied by words of encouragement and prayers. You can't guess what her next move was. Amy Jane's parents were overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. In just a week, they had enough to not only cover Matthew's treatment, but also help other families facing similar battles. For the first time in months, a sense of hope returned to the Rivers household. Though Amy Jane was overjoyed at the results, Charlotte wasn't satisfied just yet. The experience had lit a spark in her heart, one that couldn't be extinguished. Sitting at the kitchen table with her parents one evening, she announced her next plan. This wouldn't be the last batch of cookies she'd bake. "I want to help other children, not just Matthew," she explained, her voice filled with a quiet resolve. "There are so many families who need support, and if we can help even a few of them, we should." Charlotte's parents, Prince William and Princess Catherine, were deeply moved by her conviction. They had always encouraged their children to use their platform to make a difference, but Charlotte's determination felt extraordinary. Within days, they began discussions with royal advisors, charities, and organizers to help Charlotte turn her dream into reality. And so, Charlotte's Cookies for Chemo was born. The foundation began with a simple mission: to provide financial aid to families struggling with the costs of cancer treatments. It started small, with bake sales organized in schools and local communities. But it didn't take long for the initiative to snowball. Professional bakers, inspired by Charlotte's efforts, volunteered their skills to create special cookie batches for fundraising events. Supermarkets across the UK offered to sell cookies under the foundation's label, pledging a portion of their proceeds to the cause. Social media exploded with the hashtag Cookies for Chemo, as people around the world joined the movement, hosting their own bake sales in solidarity. Amy Jane, now recognized as the co-founder of the initiative, became a beloved figure in the campaign. She spoke at events alongside Charlotte, sharing her family's story and reminding audiences of the power of small acts of kindness. Despite the overwhelming attention, Amy Jane remained grounded, always emphasizing that it had all started with love for her brother. As the foundation grew, so did its impact. By the end of its first year, Charlotte's Cookies for Chemo had raised millions of pounds. The funds helped cover treatments for hundreds of children, provided emotional support for their families, and even funded research into pediatric cancer therapies. But for Charlotte, the highlight of her work was the people she met. She visited hospitals, where she sat with children undergoing chemotherapy, listening to their stories and sharing laughter. She made it a point to bake with them whenever possible, rolling out dough and sprinkling decorations while talking about their dreams for the future. Her visits didn't go unnoticed. The world watched as the young princess grew from a compassionate child into a beacon of hope for countless families. Celebrities, world leaders, and philanthropists joined the cause, amplifying its reach. But Charlotte always made sure to remind everyone where it all began with Amy Jane, a sister who just wanted to save her brother. For the Rivers family, life transformed completely. Matthew's health improved with the treatment, and though his recovery was a long road, the support of the foundation and the community gave them strength. Amy Jane, once a shy girl with flour-dusted cheeks, now stood confidently before crowds, speaking about the power of kindness and determination. Charlotte, too, grew into her role as a changemaker, always remembering the day she stopped at a humble cookie stand and met a girl who taught her that even the smallest actions could create ripples. Together, they proved that compassion knows no bounds, that even the youngest among us can light a fire of hope, and sometimes, all it takes is a cookie. Matthew's road to recovery was nothing short of miraculous. With the support of his family, the generous donations, and the expertise of his medical team, he grew stronger every day. The color returned to his cheeks, his laughter rang through the Rivers home once more, and his bond with Amy Jane deepened in ways words could not capture. For Amy Jane, seeing her brother's health restored was the greatest reward of all. But her gratitude extended far beyond Matthew's recovery. It encompassed the strangers who had believed in her cause, the neighbors who rallied around her family, and most of all, the princess who had stepped into her world and transformed her dreams into reality. For Princess Charlotte, the journey was just beginning. The small act of stopping at a cookie stand had awakened something within her. A profound sense of purpose. What had started as a desire to help a new friend had grown into a passion for bringing hope to those in need. Charlotte immersed herself in the work of the foundation, surprising everyone with her determination. She insisted on participating in every aspect of the process, from baking and packaging cookies to brainstorming new ways to raise funds. The young princess was often seen in an apron, her hands dusted with flour, her face glowing with the satisfaction of contributing to something meaningful. When asked during a televised interview why she had stopped at Amy Jane's stand that fateful day, Charlotte spoke with wisdom beyond her years. "I think it was meant to be," she said simply. Amy Jane was trying to make a difference, and I felt I had to help. Sometimes the smallest moments can change everything. Her words resonated deeply, and the world watched as the little girl who once stood behind a cookie stand became a symbol of compassion and hope. Charlotte's Cookies for Chemo quickly became more than just a foundation. It became a global movement. Partnering with hospitals, research organizations, and charities, the foundation worked tirelessly to provide financial assistance, fund groundbreaking treatments, and offer emotional support to families facing the devastating impact of cancer. Charlotte's involvement gave the foundation an authenticity that inspired others to act. She wasn't just a figurehead, she was a hands-on advocate. She visited hospitals, spoke at fundraisers, and baked cookies alongside volunteers. Her presence transformed events into celebrations of hope, her genuine warmth reminding everyone that even the smallest acts of kindness could have profound effects. Amy Jane, too, played a vital role in the foundation's growth. Despite her young age, she became a powerful voice for the cause, sharing her story at events and inspiring others to take action in their own communities. As the foundation gained traction, its impact began to ripple outward. Families around the world were not only receiving the help they needed, but were inspired to pay it forward. Bake sales sprouted in schools, churches, and community centers across continents, each one contributing to the ever-growing wave of support. Social media played a crucial role in amplifying the message. The hashtag Cookies for Chemo trends globally, uniting people from all walks of life. Stories poured in of individuals hosting cookie drives, some in honor of loved ones they had lost, others simply moved by the foundation's mission. One particularly touching moment occurred when a young boy battling cancer in Australia sent a letter to Charlotte, thanking her for giving him hope. His words, written in careful, wobbly handwriting, read, "If a princess can make cookies for kids like me, maybe one day I can help someone too." Charlotte kept the letter on her desk, a daily reminder of why she had begun this journey. What do you think of Charlotte? If you were in her place, would you do what she did? Let us know in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click on the following video on your screen. You will enjoy it.